Good morning, everybody. How you doing today? First of all, thank you very much for the well wishes over the last couple of days. I've been fighting the flu. It hit me pretty hard. As those of you on the vlog can tell, I am not looking my best. And on the podcast, you can probably hear that. There may be some grumbling, some coughing. I will try to keep that at a minimum, which is why I pre-recorded this morning's episode before streaming it out live, just in case. So a lot has gone on in the last week since I last talked to you. A few things I think I want to tackle today, or at least one thing that I want to tackle, even though the list is really, really long, was Amazon's surprise hardware event last week. So they ended up leaking out some stuff last week and then called a quick snap sort of hardware introduction, and they basically introduced everything. New Echo Show, new Echo Dot, new Echo, Echo Sub, an amplifier, a microwave, a number of things, a smart plug. And this really illustrates Amazon's Alexa Everywhere strategy. Now, the reason why I want to bring this up is because I actually get asked about smart assistants and smart home assistants quite often because obviously there's a lot of privacy concerns. Now, as always, you guys know I don't really take sides. I kind of look at it from, you need to be aware of the risk and then accept that risk or not. So as far as Siri, Google Assistant, as well as Alexa, so Siri on the HomePods, the Google Home stuff, or Alexa devices, and of course mine are freaking out as I record this video, they are always listening, that's true. But they're always listening for a key trigger word. So that always on microphone isn't recording. It's looking for that trigger word, whether that be Siri, whether that be OK Google, or whether that be Alexa. Once it hears that trigger word or thinks it hears that trigger word, then it starts to record. And nowhere is that more apparent than if you go into the Alexa app. You can see actually all of the phrases that it has recorded and what action it took as a result of those phrases. Now that can be very handy for troubleshooting. That can be handy to figure out why it made a decision. But it does raise that very real privacy concern that because it may have thought it heard its trigger word, it could be then recording. I've heard our Alexas on the main floor here trigger for a number of things that actually weren't a request to the device. So there is that privacy concern. Now that recorded data is actually sent up to the cloud, to either Apple, to Google, or to Amazon's cloud, and then it is then processed and a decision is then taken and executed depending on what it is. Now last week's event, besides the obvious new round of Echoes, which are super cool, if you have an Echo Show V1, V2 looks way, way better, far more useful, far more designed as being like the kitchen Alexa. And again, mine are just freaking out with this video. So that's obviously, you can evaluate those devices, whether they fit your needs, whether you have the last version or just getting in. Those are great choices if that's the way you want to go. But the interesting one really is the microwave and the smart plugs. Now, the smart plugs are not as smart as some aftermarket plugs. You can buy a third-party plug for probably about the same price that actually supports multiple assistants, which might be a better call. But for those of you that are in that Amazon ecosystem, that smart plug and that microwave really kind of show where Amazon wants to go with this. And they want everything Alexa enabled and an Alexa source. So the idea is to get whole home coverage. And of course, it continues to freak out. So we're just going to call her A. If you want full A, Alexa, never mind. Always fun. Alexa, stop the music. That perfectly illustrates some of the challenges with home assistants. Now, I don't know if you picked up the music on the microphone, but of course that was playing. The kids were listening to some music before they went to school. Now, that home assistant, that home utility can be super useful for things like when you walk into the kitchen, you ask what the weather is. If you're asking for timers, I use that all the time when I'm cooking. I set multiple timers. And that's a great way, hands-free, because my hands are dirty, cooking food, or at least they're covered in food products. So there are uses there, but the strategy is obviously everywhere. Now, you can't get everywhere coverage through one or two devices, so building into things like the microwave means that you're able to now control that microwave. I have a sound bar, the thermostats, all these different sources where you can have pickup. Means that you have better coverage. So anywhere that you say that trigger word, all of a sudden you can interact with the system. And that's really what it's all about. It's about not thinking about it. It's like that Star Trek Next Generation level. Computer, and it responding, which could be super cool and could be what you're going for. But there's some concerns you need to be aware of. There's no authentication here whatsoever. So if you hook up your personal Amazon account to that device, you're going to be able to make purchases if the credit card's saved, which almost always is. You're going to be able to affect the search history and make actions on that account. Now, that account also is for a lot of folks that link to their AWS, their personal AWS stuff. So what you probably want to do is create a separate account, a home account for your house, and link that up to the devices so that you can restrict the purchases or you can remove the payment information completely, and that you can have that sort of clean history. Now, there's a lot of questions there. It's really a personal choice. There's no good, there's no bad. For me, as you can obviously tell, I have it deployed here in the house, but in the basement and on the main floor. I don't have it on the second floor where people sleep and sort of the more private conversations happen and things like that. So down on the main floor, it's mainly in the kitchen for use in cooking and sort of a central home, like, hey, what's the weather today? What's the forecast going to be? Set some timers, check some things, that kind of deal. Downstairs in the basement, it's to control the home entertainment system. So very handy, very useful, but not deployed everywhere because I don't need it everywhere, and that's just a personal choice. But I think you need to be aware of those challenges. So be aware, it is listening all the time, but it's not sending it up to the cloud. It only does that once it hears a trigger word or thinks it hears its trigger word, and that's a big key. A lot of the time it's mistaken or in passing. So you've heard it several times activate during this video. Also, one of my kids is watching a great show on Netflix right now that actually has that word in the name. So every time she turns on that show, that the smart home assistant goes nuts. Now with Siri and with OK Google, not nearly as often, but still there's the potential there. So not bad, not good. Interesting strategy from Amazon though, where they want everywhere. And I think they'll get it. They're pushing out tons of cheap products. It's very useful. That solves some small needs, not any one killer like you absolutely have to have this, but some interesting things. So that's your thought for today. Thank you for all the well wishes over the last few days. As you can see, as you can hear, I'm still not 100%, but I hope to be broadcasting tomorrow despite a trip to Montreal, and Friday. And of course, next week is Sector in Toronto, where I'm keynoting on the Wednesday. So I'll have lots of live content from that show and a few other trips next week. So have a great day. What do you, or before I wrap that up, I'm not entirely with it today. What do you think about smart home assistants? What are your concerns? Are you worried about putting them in your private spaces? Let me know. Hit me up on social at MarkNCA. For those of you in the vlog, in the comments down below. And as always, by email, me at markn.ca. Have a fantastic day. I look forward to talking to you online and seeing you on the show tomorrow.